Imagine you're playing in your playground and suddenly a car with strangers arrives and they take you out of your home where you speak to your mother in your own language. They put you in a different place, in a different city, far away from your family, where you are not allowed to speak your language. You're not allowed to speak the language that is shaping you, is shaping your personality, is shaping your soul. You're not allowed to speak the language which is part of your cultural identity, part of your heritage. Imagine you're not allowed to speak English anymore. Just imagine that. Thousands and thousands of Aboriginal children were taken out of their homes due to governmental policies. They were banned from speaking their own languages, their own beautiful, complex Aboriginal languages. There were 330 Aboriginal languages in Australia, as far as we know. These governmental policies led to the phenomenon that we call the stolen generation. One of the stolen generation people is Barngarla man Howard Richards. Howard, tell us a little bit about your childhood here in the reserve and what happened when you were taken to Adelaide.
Well, what happened is that I was playing around where the old people were sitting on the hill just overlooking Valley Park, and we saw a black car with other members of our family in the back sitting, and the old people were looking, and we could see this black car coming up the road, and out the police and the welfare officer came out and talking to our mothers, and I was standing alongside, and I can hear what was being said, and I was looking down the pathway where I wanted to run away into the scrub because they wouldn't catch me, and but when I saw my brothers and my other members of my family sitting in the car, I was caught between the two. I wanted to run, but I couldn't, and so I stayed. And our mums were arguing with the welfare officer and the police at that time, and they said, "You'd better come too, Howard." And that's when the wailing and crying of our people were screaming and shouting, and the welfare and the police put us in the car.
And this was in Marley Park, Port Lincoln. And then what happened? The car took you away to Adelaide, or?
No, we were taken down to the police station, and because I was the oldest one, and my other cousin was with us, and two boys, the oldest out of the two, they put us in the cell for the night, and the rest of the members of the family went and stayed elsewhere. I don't know, but probably someone else's home.
How old was the youngest brother?
The youngest was between 2 and 3 years of age.
Right, and where did he stay the night?
They stayed with someone within the welfare arranged for them to stay somewhere. But we spent the night in the cell.
And what happened after that? I mean, the next morning.
We went to court the next day, and our mums were down at the courthouse, and And that was when we heard that we were in charge with neglect, and then we were sent away for safekeeping.
And you were sent away to Adelaide, is it?
On the Tree Bridge, the ship, the ferry that was running between Port Lincoln and Adelaide, they put us on the boat that afternoon, and we travelled to Kangaroo Island, then to Adelaide.
And when you arrived in Adelaide, what happened then? Where did they send you, and were you with your brothers?
We came to Adelaide, we was all in shock because we were coming to a strange place. We didn't, first time we ever been into a city, first time we ever been on a boat, the first time we ever been to Kangaroo Island, and the first time to Adelaide and seen all the lights and the high buildings, skyscrapers. We were just in shock, and then they went through the courts in Adelaide, King William Street. Then they sent us to Windana, remand home for about a month. When we came to Windana, then that's when they separated us again. The girls and the smaller boys went off, and me and my other cousin were sent to the boys section in Windana. So we were separated again.
And what did you do there in Windana? Is this a school or an institute?
It was a place where we had a lot of other kids were there. We were just getting into the routine of the day-to-day, change of clothes, communal showers, communal beds, dormitories. We was in the routine of the lifestyle of being in the remand home.
And did you go to school every day? Or?
We just done things throughout the day, but because we were reminded, and it was just the life of the remand home. We just sort of had no choice but to fit into what was done at that time, yeah.
Right. And what happened then, growing up in this institute in Adelaide? What did you do when you were released?
Well, there were a lot of things that were going on at that time. There were some of the things that we were doing were just to keep us preoccupied throughout the day.
Did you see your mother? Did you see your mother when you were in Adelaide?
No, we couldn't. We didn't have any visitors, so we didn't. There was no communication, nothing whatsoever. We just sort of had to fit in with what was there.
It's interesting that the word in Barngarla for communication, wadlada, is the same word for tree. You know, you have such beautiful trees here near Port Lincoln. And in Barngarla, tree and communication, or tree and saying, telling, have the same word. So it's very beautiful. Were you exposed to any Aboriginal speech when you were in Adelaide in this institute?
Well, I think that if I was at home and things like that, that was a different environment that we lived in, and our parents and grandparents would speak to us in some languages, and we do understand that. But when we went into the routine of the homes, you just did what you was told, whether it be yes sir, no sir. You was expected to do it. If you didn't conform to the rules of the institution or the remand home, you were getting certain punishments, and you had to do some exercises and things like that, just as part of the discipline.
So it was similar to military?
No, it was very regimental. The officers that were there, so many kids in the home, and you just had to conform to what was set out throughout the day.
Right. And how old were the children there?
There were a lot of kids,
Right.
all different ages.
The youngest one would be 7, or?
The smaller ones would be sent into the girls section, so they separated.
Right.
And the older ones would be put together in different sections. Yeah.
Right.
Isabel's asking if she can come and sit here.
Yes, yes.
Because some of the questions
Yes.
she'll be able to remind.
Excellent.
of.
Howard, were there any Aboriginal traditions, Aboriginal expressions, Aboriginal languages that were kept within this institution?
No, before I got taken away, my auntie said to me at the courthouse, and she shook me up and grabbed my shoulders and looked me in the eye and said, said to me, tell them who they are and where they come from. Tell them not to forget us and don't get fostered out or don't get adopted out because you'll never ever see us again. And when we went into the boys' home, one of the questions that or comments that were made was that you wouldn't have a problem to get adopted out because you're fairly white.
You can be white.
And you would not have a problem to be fostered out or adopted. And straight away, I remember what my auntie said to me.
When did you see your family after you moved to Adelaide? When was the first time that you saw them again?
The only time that, I saw them is the one we was in the Windana, we remanded, then we went back to court. We had to travel back on the Treebeach back to Port Lincoln, went to court, and then that's when we got committed to become state wards till the age of 18, and that's when they passed sentence on us to say that we were...
That was the last time you saw your family?
That was, that's when I saw my mum and aunties, and I didn't see them till 3 years later after they came of age. The only time I saw my cousin is he came to the boys' home and visited us once. That was the only time.
But years later, when Howard got his records, he found that they had written lots and lots of letters asking, can they come home or can they come and see them? And the reply was always no.
Right. And you did not see the letters?
No. I wrote letters every week. The letters were to the point where do you want to be fostered out or adopted out, and I said we want to go home, and always made it very clear my intentions were to go home. I wanted to go home, and we done that religiously every week. Wrote letters to that effect, knowing that mums and our families were writing letters requesting for them to spend holidays with them and come home. I got the...
or to even see you.
The feeling of...
or even to see you.
They forgot about us and didn't want to see us or didn't care about us, and we thought that, I was in a very, very, I suppose, a bad position, because I thought, well, okay, there's no use crying about it. So I've been there for nearly 3 months. I said I just had to get on with it and just accept it. And I had my brothers and with me at that time, and so I had to look after them.
Right. And then you finished there at the age of 18, right? What happened at 18?
Well, leading up to it, I had different jobs that I was working on. One I got a job out at Meadows on the dairy farm. I was there for a short period of time. Then I was working in Then I left it and went back to Adelaide because I wanted to be close by. I didn't want to go too far away from my brother and my cousin.
And what happened then when you were in Adelaide?
I applied. I knew I was coming to the age of 18, so I had to apply for.
Oh, after you got out?
I went to.
When you were living on the street?
Yeah. I went back to Eyre Peninsula and I done some work, but then when I came back and saw my family, my mother and them, they were still living in the scrub, and I felt a little bit ashamed because I came home.
And the other kids were still in Adelaide?
Yeah.
So you went back and lived on the street under the bridge?
Right.
In Adelaide?
In Adelaide,
yeah.
Right.
And would go up to where his brother and cousin was at Stewart House in North Adelaide, and they would throw food over the fence or a blanket or whatever so that he could live on the street and see them.
Right. So they would throw food from that where they were to you over the fence.
And blankets.
Right.
Help him out.
I used to go to Stewart House every Sunday, but my cousin used to throw the blankets over the balcony so I could sleep in the parks, and we had it worked out, but that was just the way it was. I was happy to visit him from time to time just to keep an eye on him, and I visited my other brother and just to check on them, and I went down to Semaphore to see the others that were down there, but they were fostered out, and so I missed them. But so that was the life that I was living in the streets in Adelaide. But
so how long was that for?
I was there for about a year and a half, and
Right.
And then I had to come home and come back to Port Lincoln. Eventually got work, and then shifted away to Western Australia, and this worked over there, and that's where I met my wife, and got married. Brought her back, and my brother came out, and
they all started to come home after we came back here. When Howard came to live with us, my family, my mum and dad were both taken away and put in the mission, and my mum grew up in the mission, and so they understood his life.
Right.
And they were really positive. They were not negative people. They said, you know, we look at the positives in the life, and that affected Howard a lot because that was the way he wanted to be, rather than be a victim.
Right.
Not a victim. I've survived, I'm here, and I'm going to use the good things. And so when we came back to live here, his brothers and sisters came back, and they came back like a year apart. They all came back, and it was really sad, because they'd been away so long and didn't really his cousin, the one that was 2, when he came back, didn't realise his family was black.
Right.
And
Right.
was totally shocked that his mum was black.
Right.
yeah, he ran off into the
got
scrub,
very
and so they just let him sit there on the hill. And they just looked at him, and he was on the hill there, and they just let him come back in his own time. And so when he came back, he had no choice. He had to, because that was
when you're
his
18,
mother
you're
and
out
brothers that were there.
What's the difference between somebody who sees himself as a victim, having gone through all this ordeal, and somebody who manages to look at things positively? Can you kind of identify?
Probably because I was a lot older. I was 14. I was already set in my ways because I was raised. My grandparents and my mum and uncles and aunties, but they were very, very strong, hard-working family, very close family, and the hardships that we had at that time. But we were together, we were happy, and I think a lot of that would have rubbed off on me, and when I was taken away, I went because I was there to protect the other little ones, and that's what I'd done. If you want to call it the monkey on your back, I carry that burden. I carry that burden. I still carry that burden today. It's taken a long time for me to offload that, but it kicks in from time to time. But that responsibility at 14 years of age, and I've carried that for a long time. But when I say that I survived all that, I'm a survivor, I mean that it didn't matter what the government threw at me or what the welfare done or what the police done. Regardless, they would never ever change my mind or take control of me and to make what they want them to be. And
And you also had a really strong mum who worked her
hard.
whole life and was very like there were rules and you had to live a certain way and do things all the time, and so she instilled all of those values and all of those, the positive things in life, no matter what the circumstances were and where they were living. It was always, tomorrow's going to be better anyway. That sort of affected a lot, because by the time Howard had met me, he'd already had all those, and my mum and them just gave him that security to know that, yes, this is the right way, you are here, you survived.
Right. Isn't it ironic that your mother was accused of neglect, whereas what she gave you was exactly this strength and positiveness about life? So, in fact, she sounds like the opposite of a neglecting mother. She sounds like a mother who gave you all the tools that you needed in order to survive the neglect after they took you from your mother.
Well, there's the two ways of looking at it. Probably when you said the question about a victim and surviving it, yes, there are victims because some of them were taken at a very, very young age. Goodness knows what they went through, because I was only there for that 3-year period, and then after that, I don't know what happened to them at the time. But I think that losing that contact from their families had a lot of impact on them over time. But I think that the way I looked at it is for me, from personal experience, I've gone through all that and then come out through the other way. I see that as part of my life. It's that I survived that and lived through that. And so I looked at it in a positive way, so even for my children to say, well, that's my life. And that did happen.
Because even the word survive is a bit, you sort of feel uncomfortable. It doesn't really sit well, because life is what you make it, and our life is, being positive and passing what we've known on to our children, and especially in Howard's case, where doesn't like them to be too far away, and they've all gone away. They've left us, but they still have the values and all of that he's passed on to them. They've learned to be strong people because of the idea that, you have to do it.
Right.
You must do it.
Now, you mentioned, Howard, that you were told that it would be very easy for you to be adopted because you were lighter than the other Aboriginal people. Can you elaborate on that part?
No, it's just like switching the TV on and you can replay it back. I mean, I can see the officers there and they're just laughing about it. So you'll have no problems. You can be adopted out. And when that did come up many times, we had a couple that came from Melbourne who wanted to take it, all of us, but wanted us to be fostered out, and we had people coming in, and I, even though I was at that age, they were very difficult at that age, a lot older, but it seemed like that I appealed to them, and because I was a lot fairer. And
also, if you look at Howard's photos when he's little, he's really white with blonde hair, blonde hair, and he stands out from all the other kids.
So they felt it would have been easier to make you a white fellow because you were color-wise, you were already closer to the white fellowship, so therefore they said that you would have been a better candidate for that.
Yes. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know. It's me, because my people, I'm first generation from traditional,
full-blooded Aboriginal people.
My mum and my grandparents and my aunties and all them. And so when I see myself as a black man. I don't care what anybody says.
Because they are traditional, full-blooded Aboriginal people.
Right.
It didn't matter.
Right.
You can look at me, you can say, but you. I said, don't you? I said, I know where I am, I know where I come from. And I got to, I'll stand toe-to-toe with anybody. And it didn't matter. But so it was a waste of time talking to me. But
and what did the people in the reserve call you? What did they call you? The other people.
I had a lot of names. I was called Little White Bull, Milky Norwegian, or you're a Nosky, I had a lot of pretty names, but no nickname that I got is called Bully, so I lived it out.
Right. There is a famous Israeli writer called Aleph Bet Yoshua, whose nickname is Bully. Bully. Yeah. So B-U-L-I, I think, or B-U-L-L-Y, Bully.
That's odd.
Yeah, so Bully it's a famous nickname in revived Hebrew because of Aleph Bet Yoshua, whom I know personally, by the way, and he's very famous in Israel. He wrote some very amazing books. So, Howard, would you like to discuss what happened 2 years ago, or would you like to leave it for another time? Or
no, I think the timing's right. Now I think I want to talk about it because it's important. It's important for me. Really, it's been a burning issue for me for a long time. But the reason why I want to talk about it is my daughter and my
our youngest daughter
partner, Lionel and Helva. It was because when they lost their daughter, our granddaughter, and it was through them came back from Melbourne to Port Lincoln, and they spent time with us because Lionel Ampert was a researcher in the Koori Heritage Trust in Melbourne. And over the years, I've tried to find out where my father was or where he is from, and I was not knowing. And so they decided to look for my father because I had a name and I had a birthday.
And they wanted something to fill in their time.
Because they were going through the grieving of losing their daughter and that. And so it was that time they spent with us. And all the years that I've been looking for a long time, because it was only just a name and a birthday, Lionel and Elle were able to make contact in 2 months. When they'd done the research, they checked all the records. He was a sailor that came from Norway, and it was the timing. It was in the 50s, and so we were able to track it. They were able to track it, and then they were so good at it because
then they hit a wall because they said you have to have permission from his family to access records. And so they went to the museum in Oslo. And they said, oh yes, he's here and he has family, which was shocking.
And
very shocking.
5 sons.
4 brothers he had.
4 brothers. And they made contact.
One was still alive.
And and he was 85.
His name was Thor.
Thor. T-H-O-R, yeah.
Yes, with a hammer.
Right.
So what happened was that they knew all along.
They called him up and they said, oh, we've been waiting. You finally found us.
So
that was such a surprise.
So that happened 2 years ago?
Yes.
And can you explain it was your first trip to Europe, is it?
No, he'd been there before.
To Norway? It was your first trip to Norway?
Yeah, to Norway, yeah.
Yes. And Howard, can you describe this meeting with your uncle? Because your father, unfortunately, was already passed away. So what was the meeting like with Thor in Norway, not far from Bergen?
Yes, in Tissedal, in the fjord lands.
Yeah, Western Norway, the mountains.
It was absolutely lovely.
Meeting Thor was and
Lillian.
Uncle Thor, Auntie Lillian in Australia,
Yeah.
and all my May, the daughter, was the first cousin. She was looked after us while I was over there and showed us around. And but meeting him is just probably as close as I can get to my father, the brother of, and they were very, very close. And the stories they talked about Arvid was that he was a good man.
And it was really funny because the people in the reserve here who knew him would always say he was a good man. He got over there and they said exactly the same thing. You never, there's a huge world of difference there.
Some of the comments come from an old lady, and she knew him very well, and she knew Mum. They were both of the same age, and talked very highly of him, that he was a very kind-hearted person, and she made that comment, said, "You are a good man, just like your father." So,
you are the only son, is it? You're the only child of your father?
Oh, yes.
I'm the only son of Arvid. He had no other children. Having met Thor and spending time with him, and then we came back. He passed. He died up in the mountains because he was a mountain man. That's what they normally do. The next line from Thor, the next generation was, I'm the oldest in that line. So,
And one of the few sons. There are a lot of daughters. There are not many sons. And that was really interesting because one of Thor's sons was very sceptical. Who is this person? He could be anybody coming here and saying he's the son of Arvid. And his sister May, who we live with, she said I'll wait and see what he says, because either he will say yes, it's true, or no, it's not. And he had driven like 6 hours down through all the tunnels and everything, and had come to meet Howard, and he came in the room and took one look and just rushed over and gave him a big hug and said, and she said, she was so happy because she thought, oh my gosh, you are who you say you are. And one of the things Howard's always complained about is his hair. Hated his hair. His mother had the most beautiful hair. Got over there and all the men had the same hair, and it just gave him away because they kept on feeling his head. But he knew straight away, Hans. He just loved.
And were they were not looking for you because they knew that they had an Aboriginal relative, but they were not looking for you throughout the years, or they were looking and they couldn't find you.
I don't know what that was one of the questions that I would have loved to ask my father, but he's passed, but that's to be respected. But at the end of the day, I didn't know that stories were coming out that later, but we were told by them that he actually had a photo of Mum and of me when I was a baby, and carried that with him all his life, and he passed it on to his mother, my grandmother in Norway, and they kept it in their possession all that time. So they knew. Hans did come to Australia. They did come to look at him, but they didn't know where to start.
And he said, the thing was, that's his life. When he's ready, he will come to us. Because they said that they'd waited 60 years. That was very exciting. It was really exciting. Mm-hmm. And they were so nice. We really liked the man. Now it's just sort of fitted. Except for the reindeer meatballs they made us eat. Didn't like that at all.
So Howard, do you connect this reconnection with your Norwegian father, or the family of your Norwegian father, to the reconnection with the Barngarla heritage through the Barngarla language reclamation? Do you see any link between the two? Is it something like closing a circle, or?
Well, I think that the interesting thing about all that is that in Bergen, they've got what you call the well-known the Seven Sisters.
Mm.
And we found that so interesting.
And I find that very interesting.
Story.
The Seven Sisters.
Yes.
It's our story.
And in the Barngarla,
Seven Sisters.
the Seven Sisters, Vera and the Seven Sisters. In the Barngarla is the same, and so in Norway, so you got the Seven Sisters, so the waterfalls.
And we found lots of things. Yeah.
So the similarities.
And also the
coincident.
Yeah.
right. I mean, we are all product of the same nature, and people look at the sky, and you have the Sami in Norway, who are the indigenous people who happen to be very good fishermen, just like the Barngarla. So in fact, the Barngarla and the Sami have a lot to do with each other. And as it happens, there is a Sami language revival happening now in Norway. So there is also this link between an indigenous person in Port Lincoln, Eyre Peninsula, South Australia, and indigenous people in Norway. I just find this kind of reconnection, it's kind of double reconnection, if you want, with the Barngarla heritage that you were stripped from being taken away from your mother, and with the Norwegian heritage that unfortunately you did not have any access to throughout your life, because, I mean, your father left when you were 1, is it? Or?
Left at
Around there.
Yeah.
Right.
Went back to Norway.
He didn't actually.
Because of the time, the policies back in them days, they were very, very strict and rigid, and no white person was not to be associated with any black person. And there were a lot of things that were going on at that time in the 50s. So, and I think that probably had a big part in it in regards to why he didn't come back for whatever reason. Yeah, so that's one of the things that we do know as Aboriginal people in Australia, that we live under all those policies that do impact on us, affect us, because on the missions and on the reserves, we have a sign up there that the Aboriginal Protection Board, no non-Aboriginal was to be seen on the reserve or anything. You'd have to have permits or whatever. So that time was hard even right back then, and a lot of them things that were happening.
And that also made such a difference because of the rigidness of the policy and the Native Welfare Department's protection, I suppose, of the people. They had no choice. They couldn't go and continue speaking their language and practicing their culture with their families because they weren't allowed to do that. The welfare would find out, and the welfare said, "You don't do that. That's not right."
Right.
A lot of us lost language because of that, and in the case of Howard, when we were married, we came back home and his auntie was singing us a song in her language, and Howard said, "I didn't even know you spoke your language," and they spoke their language very fluently to each other.
Right.
But obviously nobody else knew what they were saying, so that was a bit difficult. And the reason was, well, we weren't allowed to, because his mum and them were in the mission in Kiniba, and so the missionary said, when you're in the mission, you speak English, you don't speak your language. And
right. This was governmental policy.
yes, oh yes.
So you actually point out a very interesting fact that the governmental policies of the time in Australia, in a way, took away from you both your father and your mother, not only your mother, because your father might have well felt that it was against the policies to be associated with an Aboriginal woman, and this might well have been the case that he decided to leave. So this kind of explains the double impact of the governmental policies, not only the stolen generation part.
Yeah, I think that we know that it had a lot to do with it, and through the research and a lot of the things were coming out, made it very crystal clear to us what was actually going on at that time. It didn't take long to figure it out. Our people lived under extreme conditions at that time. We adjusted to everything over time. What I tell you to do is try and take the positives from all that and the experience that I went through with all this, finding my father, but also knowing that where I come from and who I am and where what my future holds for me. I think it's important. And looking at going over to Norway and meeting my father's people and that, and their love for their land, and they spend a lot of time up in the mountains. There's from 600 to 900 meters high.
They live very high.
Very high, very, very high mountains, and they hunt and they fish and all weathers and
live off the land.
And they live off the land. And
all the food we ate was from what they'd killed and gathered on the mountain.
Right, so they're autonomous. They don't need to go to the supermarket. They are autonomous.
No, all the food we ate in there was food that they'd gone and got themselves, and it was lovely.
Right.
So, with that, the same.
Very similar.
Because I live out here, and I do from time to time do a lot of travelling and go hunting and fishing and things like that. That's what I'd like to get back to, but.
Right. Yeah. We are all Homo sapiens sapiens. We know. And it doesn't matter whether we are Barngarla or Norwegian or Sami or Jewish or Lutheran or whatever. Now, Howard, I would like to thank you for showing us the power of one and the positive mindset that you have despite going through all these terrible events in your life. You still seem to be very optimistic about the future and very strong. I mean, do you have any, just to end, do you have any prediction about the future of Aboriginal Australians in Australia? I mean, do you see the developments happening now as positive? I mean, do you have an optimistic outlook? Where do you think Aboriginality is heading towards in Australia? Is it assimilation? Is it a strong Aboriginal community? What does the future tell us here? Well,
I think that for me is that we can see a lot of things on the television. We read about the papers and the media, and we see a lot of the changes of governments, and we lived under a lot of the policies, and so we become very immune to all that, and so here we go again.
Bounces it all the time.
And but I think that the good thing that's coming, that recognition in the Constitution, that's very important for us, that recognition. But not only that recognition, but there should be action from that, and I believe that we are the first people of this country.
Right.
And also for us, we see our hope in our grandchildren. Our children are all grown up and live their lives independently. They all work, and our grandchildren are now going into boarding schools. And we can see that hopefully they retain their Aboriginality, but at the same time they're able to live in the world that we live in now.
Right.
And so our hope is our grandchildren that's happening, and even though most of them are very young, that's the direction our children are pushing them.
Right.
Because they know that they're going to have to adapt. And one of the things that Howard's really would like them to do is to learn their language. Because I think that even though they are now strong young people, that then just makes them full, whole, because that's their language, and they shouldn't lose it because of what happened before.
Right.
It's really important. That's something that we would like to see, that our children learn.
Right.
Our language, their language.
And this leads me to my last question, and this is about Clamor Wilhelm Schumann. On the 7th of June 2015, which is in several months, we're going to celebrate 200 years for his birth. Clamor Wilhelm Schumann, who wrote the Barngarla Dictionary in 1844. How do you see Clamor Wilhelm Schumann What does he symbolize for you? He was a protector of Aborigines in Port Lincoln in the 1840s, so 170 years ago. Relatively, it's all relative. He was pro-Aboriginal. How do you see Clamor Wilhelm Schumann?
I would have to see him as a person that, with all the oppression that happened to our people at that time, that he was the one person that stood up and advocated on behalf of, but also really at the cold front with all the atrocities and all the things that were happening on the Eyre Peninsula to our people, and that he was able to speak on behalf of our people. And to my way of looking at it, that what he done was preserved a lot of our language. He done the books and all in alphabetic order of all flora, fauna, animal life, bird life, because he actually lived amongst our people, and he was able to speak the language and experience all that. And so, in one sense, have to admire him for what he done, and
he was very
to this
brave,
day,
wasn't he? He was very brave.
Very brave, very, very, very brave. The other thing is that what maintains through all this, that because of his Lutheran background, which is part of our background in terms of the Lutheran Church, that's maintained all the way through, the connection between our people and the Lutheran ministry at that time with the missionaries throughout that. Yes, I would say that you only had to admire, given the conditions that were at that time and the work that he's done. And to this day is that when you look back and look at the language in itself, and this person was a very important person to us. He's given us something.
Thank you so much, Howard Richards, for your inspiration. And it's wonderful to be your friend. And thank you so much, Isabel, as well, for this interview. Thank you. It's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.